Waiting for Arnold to respond about your fight.
He hasn't said anything. I challenged him to a fight. He's scared. I'm telling you, he's scared. I know you guys are skeptical.
But you know what? News breaks on this show. Something we have learned.
Well, yesterday
right?
we had a whole show, right? And then
we had it planned.
We had a plan. It was ready to go. And then Donald Trump said, no, you don't. We have a different show.
He's like, I'm actually going to EP the show, and you're going to change it all.
Yep. He might want to change it today. Who knows?
Yeah. We will wait and see. You are always on President Trump Twitter watch, so you'll keep us posted
I'll be
if we hear
monitoring all
anything.
morning long if it does. But it's interesting because you had yesterday morning where he tweets out about the fact that he believed Trump Tower was wiretapped. A series of tweets about that. And then the rest of the day it was, you know, fill in the blank, right? A lot of speculation, conversations. Hey, where does this come from? What evidence exists? Well, and we had a little bit come out yesterday.
Yeah, well, you have all the Sunday shows today, so the administration can go out there in full force, obviously, right? And talk about tax cuts, repealing Obamacare, trade.
Oh, is that still going on?
I think.
Well, that's, of course,
I don't know, Pete, are they still working on that agenda?
Of course they're still working on that, but you know what? The there is, see, people think this is a distraction, but what last night on Justice with Judge Zanine, Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager for President Trump, went out there and said, it's not just that this is a distraction. This is part of the story. This could be the story.
The tax cuts?
No.
Yeah, no.
When are they getting to the winning?
They'll get to the winning, but you got to get past the swamp first. And if the swamp is trying to undercut you to begin with, and using the powers of surveillance, then it gets
but you're right. He came down really hard last night on Judge Zanine, even saying that he even brought up Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, into this whole conversation. Here's what he said last night.
What we've seen from the previous administration is that they did spend time listening to conversations between then Senator Jeff Sessions and the ambassador to Russia while he was in his U.S. Senate office. If that were to take place, which supposedly did take place, what other conversations did they listen in on from the American public?
That they were listening to conversations between then Senator Sessions and the Russian ambassador Kislyak? Or are you talking about Mike Flynn and Kislyak?
No, I'm talking about Jeff Sessions. So, this previous administration has said that they were aware of the conversation on two different occasions where then Senator Jeff Sessions met with the ambassador, one time during the Republican National Convention, but more importantly, the second time that he met with was in the United States Senate office in a federal building, and they were monitoring what a United States senator was having a private conversation with, is what I understand. And if that is the case, that's very concerning.
No, that's a very powerful statement from a well-connected guy.
Wait, what part of the statement was powerful? Corey Lewandowski, if that wiretap of a U.S. Senate office took place, and he said it reportedly took place.
How do we know about the meetings that have occurred? How do you know about that? All the leaks that have occurred,
somebody leaked
all
it out.
The things that have come out in the New York
Times. I agree.
Times,
Somebody leaked it out, and then Jeff Sessions had to admit, oh, yes, I did meet my office. But that doesn't prove that there was a wiretap of his office.
Well, but there is a FISA court order, which is
and that's a
have you seen that court order?
Oh, but the president has. I mean, that's the point. So why do we take the New York Times and the Washington Post at the failing New York Times at their word when they don't cite sources? It's anonymous and they have outrageous headlines. But we don't take the President of the United States at his word when he tweets something out and says, I have evidence, I know that my Trump Tower was wiretapped.
Here's what I would say.
FISA court orders exist.
President Trump has an ability like we've never seen before to turn the narrative, right? Before this, all we were talking about was the suspicion with the Trump administration and the Russians. Are they colluding and what are they investigating? We still haven't found a lot of there either. But what he was able to do yesterday was turn this narrative around to pretty much put the Obama administration, the former administration, on the defense to say, well, what's going on here? Now there are questions that they might have been wiretapping the Trump Tower. That he was successful at doing. But you mentioned the whole media part of this. And Twitter he's used as a tool to say, no one's going to believe what I say. Well, so I'm going to go around the media and I'm going to talk directly to the American people and tell them.
He did that yesterday. He certainly sees it. But now you have Corey Lewandowski doubling, tripling down and saying maybe there's a wiretap of a U.S. senator, a sitting U.S. senator at the time, now the Attorney General.
Which FISA is used to spy on foreign services, foreign operatives. So if we're using that to reveal information about domestic conversations,
that would be a huge problem.
That would be a huge problem. So we need to find out
the evidence is coming out.
Well, the evidence. Well, of course, the media is going to say there's no evidence, right? So this is the media yesterday. The New York Times saying Trump offering no evidence, says Obama tapped his phone. CNN says Trump's baseless wiretap claim. The Washington Post, Trump citing no evidence, even though all of those outlets love to put out articles with no anonymous sources and no evidence without being privy to the intelligence that the commander-in-chief would be privy to, would have to acknowledge.
But the most interesting part of yesterday, I thought, was the statement that came from the Obama camp, right? From people that are close to the former President Obama. So here was his statement. He says, a cardinal rule of the Obama administration was that no White House official ever interfered with any independent investigation led by the Department of Justice. As part of that practice, neither President Obama nor any White House official ever ordered surveillance on any U.S. citizen. Any suggestion otherwise is simply false.
But leaves, a lot of wiggle room.
But this was the most interesting thing, I thought. John Favreau, he was a speechwriter for former President Obama, very well connected, and he tweeted this out yesterday. He said, I'd be careful about reporting that Obama said there was no wiretapping. Statement just said that neither he nor the White House ordered it, and I thought that was really telling yesterday.
So was it ordered by the FBI? Was it ordered by the Justice Department? It does not prove that there was not wiretap. So it suggests actually the contrary. It suggests that Donald Trump is right.
That's
that
evidence.
there was a wiretap or multiple wiretaps. We just don't know. Was it at Trump Tower? Was it a wiretap of the then nominee for president in October? Or was it for Michael Flynn? Was it for Jeff's? Because now you've got Corey Lewandowski suggesting this was wide-ranging, that it was not just at Trump Tower potentially, that it was in the U.S. Senate. That raises the stakes. Obviously,
and you've got the declassification aspect of it, the concern that on their way out, the Obama administration declassified some of the stuff, and the New York Times has reported on it being widely disseminated, so that these breadcrumbs could be picked up by people who want to report against the Trump administration. So you want to talk about the drip, 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 the leaks that have come out. There's a lot of frustration.
Which is really the root of the problem here.
Of course, and where's it all coming from? Here's just a small sampling of the timeline of the leaks that have occurred from the Russian dossier in January to the black sites, the stuff about executive orders, the Mexican phone call on February 1st, obviously Michael Flynn, then Jeff Sessions. And we talked about this morning, Ed. He's got a successful State of the Union on Tuesday, and then suddenly Wednesday, Thursday, here comes an anonymously sourced New York Times, Washington Post article about Jeff Sessions.
Those leaks clearly seem to be designed to throw President Trump off his game and say he gave this great speech. Even some liberals were saying, great job. He was trying to unify the country, with his rhetoric. And it looked like his agenda maybe was going to get on track. What's confusing to me is why then, after that successful speech, yes, there were more leaks. Clearly, some people inside the government appear to be trying to throw him off his game, but then why did he give more ammunition
yesterday? There's so many question marks here, and that's why when his tweets came through yesterday morning, we were all sitting on the couch sort of stunned of like, this is breaking news at this moment. If this is actually true, this leads to a whole nother investigation. All the more question marks.
We're going to have some great guests on today to talk about FISA court orders and what that means, because there have been 35,000 requests for FISA support court orders. Only 12 have been denied. One of those was the request initially in June to surveil Trump Tower, and with Trump's name listed. Why was it denied? Because was it too broad? Was it too focused on a presidential candidate? But then eventually a FISA court order was approved in October. How was it not approved in June, but approved in October in the midst of a presidential cycle? Just a ton of questions. And if it was focused on Russian conversations, then why are we getting information about domestic meetings, which is not what FISA surveillance is meant to do?
But that's been a debate for years, right? I mean, Edward Snowden, as he put forward the leaks that he found that our phone calls had been listened into, that they had some deal with Verizon, right? And that brought up the fact that it's not just about foreign governments anymore. That where do you draw the line when it comes to privacy and what we want to use the FISA courts for? And I think a lot of people are trying to better understand
the law
what
is clear.
is the FISA
The law is
court.
clear what you can and cannot do, and you cannot just disseminate information, breadcrumbs about meetings with FISA. This is about imminent attacks on our country. That's what FISA is for, to surveil foreign enemies.
All of this started with Mark Levin. And he's going to come on the show.
Yes. So
he reported on this
radio
last
talk
week.
show host Mark Levin, who's got a massive audience, is going to be on the show later on, as well as so it's a great exclusive here on Fox and Friends, as well as James Rosen, who
Chief
himself
correspondent. He faced surveillance under the Obama administration, so he may have a unique perspective on all of this.
I think I might say there's not another show that's going to cover this.
Nobody's going to cover it like us.
In depth.
And we have an expert on about the FISA courts, which I'm excited about.
We're going to let you handle that one. That's really
I'm such a geek. I'm such a geek. I love this stuff. All right, we do have some other headlines to get to this morning. President Trump expected to sign a revised executive travel order this week. The new order restricting travel from 7 Middle Eastern and African countries could come as early as tomorrow. The president's original order has been held up in federal court since it was signed in late January. The executive action is aimed at preventing radical Islam terrorists from reaching our soil. And people across the nation showing their support for our commander-in-chief. March for Trump rallies were held in over 40 states, but counter-protesters also showed up attempting to shut down any support for the president. Things did get ugly in Berkeley, California. Fists flying between President Trump supporters and protesters. Police arresting nearly a dozen people. The brawls leaving 7 people injured. And a wannabe jihadi now facing terrorism charges for trying to join ISIS. Federal investigators say Elvis Rez Zipagic of New York told them that he was ready to strap a bomb and sacrifice himself for jihad after getting busted for pot. Authorities say he traveled to the Middle East twice to join the terror group in Syria, but was turned away by border officials. He's now being held without bail. And if you aren't tired of Alec Baldwin's President Trump impersonation on Saturday Night Live, well, you will be soon.
I'm loving this press conference.
To the audiobook.
So someone else will write it, he'll put his name on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, a lot of news coming up. More on that top story. A man who was on the short list to be President Trump's CIA chief and the former chair of the House Intel Committee. Pete Hoekstra will...
Welcome back. Well, Speaker Ryan asked Friday night on Special Report if he could confirm the reports that President Trump was being wiretapped. Here's what he said.
Have you heard that?
Well, again, and like I said, none of us in Congress or anybody that I know in Congress has been presented with evidence to the contrary of what you just said.
So you believe it to be true?
Yeah, that we have seen no evidence that anybody in this campaign or any other American was in on it with the Russians to meddle in our elections. We know they meddled. Russia is an adversary, and that's something we have to work to counteract.
So was he confirming it or not? Here to react, former chair of the House Intelligence Committee and former Trump campaign surrogate, Pete Hoekstra. Good to see you this morning, Congressman. And I wonder, what do you make of that? Because, you know as well as anyone that the chair and ranking member of the House Intel Committee, as well as the Speaker and the Minority Leader, are usually briefed of something of this magnitude. How he answered Brett Baer's question, was he confirming that Trump Tower was wiretapped or not?
Well, I think the Speaker was being very, very careful. When you're dealing with, the wiretaps, especially the content of phone calls that may involve U.S. persons, that's a gang of 8 thing. Only 8 people in Congress may have been briefed on something like that. And I think Paul was just being very, very careful that he didn't divulge anything in this top secret classified briefing that he may have received.
So, sir, was he being careful because it's true and he didn't want to officially confirm it? Or was he being careful because these are just reports? I mean, you had to deal with this as a member of the Gang of 8.
Right.
Was he being careful because there's some there?
I think he's probably being very careful. I'd like to believe that there's some there. I think there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that says there's some there. And so I think he handled it. Yeah, with that perhaps multiple people within the Trump campaign, within the Trump transition team, may have been wiretapped through FISA, through this capability that we have. Remember, this all came up during the Bush administration. Remember when we first learned of, or the American people first learned of all of this data, this digital data that NSA could sweep up on a global basis, and that sometimes Americans might inadvertently be caught. And that was when the American people became concerned, what if this was ever turned against us?
No, that's a really interesting point. And the question that we're still waiting on is the proof that from President Trump and the administration from these tweets yesterday. What are they going to back that up with? Does he have that proof? What do you make of that?
I think there's, again, with the information that's already coming out, it appears that, there is evidence of that. We know that. How do we know that? Take a look at what happened with Michael Flynn. I think in 8 years, or the 6.5 years that I was in the leadership on the Intel Committee, it was a extremely rare circumstance where we might have seen the content of an American captured through foreign surveillance, where we actually would have seen the transcript. That does not happen very often. But all of a sudden, you've got one of the key advisors to the president-elect, where his conversations were not only swept up. It appears that they were disseminated fairly widely through the intelligence community, and then the content was provided to the media. That is a huge breach of federal law.
The stakes are enormous, Congressman. We appreciate your insights this morning.
Yeah, good to have you here.
Hey, good. Thank you.
That down. All right. Coming up, how do President Trump supporters feel about the wiretap claims? Pete went to Trump Tower to find out. You don't want to miss this.
Good morning again. We're back with some quick headlines. Vice President Pence demanding an apology from the Associated Press after it published his wife's private email address. Pence sharing this letter he wrote to the AP, tweeting out, quote, "When we requested they take it down, they refused. The AP owes my wife an apology." The AP then responding with this statement, quote, "AP removed the email address from subsequent stories after learning Mrs. Pence still used the account." The AP has yet to apologize, though, to Mrs. Pence. And his name draws cheers nationwide.
General James Mad Dog Mattis.
Turns out there's a nickname our new Secretary of Defense prefers over Mad Dog. James Mattis says he likes to be called Chaos, which stands for Colonel has an outstanding solution. Sounds interesting, Pete.
What do you think, Pete?
That was his call sign in combat, Chaos.
Chaos.
So, well, speaking of a little bit of chaos, but controlled chaos, yesterday was the 44th day of the Trump presidency, and across the country.
And he's the 45th president.
And he's the 45th president, so a fitting day for his supporters to come out and show their support. One of the locations where they did so was outside of Trump Tower, where there's been some allegations of wiretapping, so maybe they listened to our conversation, but I had a chance to talk to some Trump supporters, get their sense of how they feel of all the news of the day. Here's what they said.
Why are you all out here?
I felt motivated to come here to support the president.
We are the modern patriots. What do you make of all the leaks that are coming out?
I think it's actually, an organized attempt to try to undermine our president.
I think to take down any president of the United States is a horrible thing to do, because why wouldn't you want the president to be successful? Why wouldn't you want America to be successful?
Can I ask you a question? Are you a Russian agent?
No.
When did the Democrats go all Dr. Strangelove? You go back a generation, they used to criticize the Republicans for not getting along with the Russians. Now that we're being diplomatic, now we're traitors.
That's exactly what Trump is saying right now. Well, if you're going to insinuate that we're in the bed with Russia, we're going to do the very same to you. Guess what? We can both play this game, and it is a game, and it's really undermining the progress that our country could make. It's disgusting, and we're the ones who suffer.
Who was it that said, tell Vladimir that after the election I'll have more flexibility?
Who else? Obama.
Who was it that issued the reset button in a new relationship with Russia?
Hillary. and they all have connections. They're all hypocrites. That's the problem. They're all hypocrites. They say what the enemy they are, what they say the enemy is.
Are you a Russian agent?
No soy de Russia.
You saw the tweets this morning. What do you make of what President Trump is talking about as far as wiretaps at Trump Tower?
I'm not happy about it at all. Well, any of us could be wiretapped.
Does it worry you that potentially an Obama administration, a month before an election, would be authorizing, even if it was legal, wiretaps of Trump Tower? Does that...
Definitely not okay.
I think it's insane. I don't think the President of the United States can't do that without a court order.
So even if there was an order or a sense that maybe there was communication with somebody, does it concern you that in the middle of an election you would be listening in on the opposition candidate and potentially using
that's back to 1972. That's Watergate type of thing. But I'd like to see any kind of evidence.
Have you seen evidence yet that there is collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians?
I haven't seen anything directly, no.
There's been a lot of talk about potential collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians over the course of the election. Have you seen evidence that that's true also?
No, not at all. I mean, there's evidence that there's been contacts, but we don't know yet, at least the public doesn't, about the details of those contacts. So right now, you really can't make a real judgment upon collusion. I mean, that's a grand accusation.
A lot of accusations. I don't think there's a lot of evidence. That's the issue. A lot of accusations with no evidence.
That sounds a little pro-Trump. Are you a Russian agent?
Nietsky.
I think I found one right there.
There you go.
These people, though, are smarter than most of our media. It's so refreshing to hear their perspective, because they're the ones that ultimately matter. And whenever we go to these diners, that's exactly what I hear from them. It's like, thank you for giving us a voice.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting people understand how we feel about
They're really
things.
dialed in. They're following the news. They want to feel like they want their president to have an opportunity to succeed. And so we want to get your thoughts as well. Email us this morning. Let us know what you think about the recent developments, the wiretaps, the leaks, and what could be a very concerted attempt to take down.
But the big takeaway there, no one knows anything on either side.
There's
we
no
just don't
evidence on
know.
either.
We don't know. We're going to keep it going.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right. What are President Obama's motives in undermining President Trump? Is it all about Hillary Clinton? Author Ed Klein joins us on the...
I think that President Obama is behind it because his people are certainly behind it. And some of the leaks possibly come from that group. You know, some of the leaks, which are really very serious leaks because they're very bad in terms of national security. But I also understand that's politics. And in terms of him being behind things, that's politics. And it will probably continue.
All right, that was President Trump on Monday with Fox and Friends, saying that former President Obama has been, and his team have been behind the protests and behind all these leaks we've seen come out over recent weeks. We want to bring in Ed Klein, author of Guilty Sin, and exactly, Ed. And now we have this weekend, Ed. Boom.
Right. Exactly.
What do you make of all of it?
Well, I think there's two things going on simultaneously. One is the intelligence community at war with Donald Trump and his administration. I think that's pretty clear. I mean, he doesn't like them. He's called them Nazis, if you recall.
During the transition, it got ugly.
Right. The American intelligence community went over to Israel, told the Israelis, don't cooperate with this new administration because they might leak stuff to the Russians, if you remember that.
Sure.
But at the same time, we know that the NSA twice tried to get a FISA court to give them permission to tap the computer in Trump Tower, and the second time they got the permission, at least that's what we've been told, and then the conversations by Americans were leaked to various press.
Which is not supposed to happen.
Which was not supposed to happen.
And now you have more on the computers?
Pardon me?
You have more information on those computers that may have been tapped into at Trump Tower?
I don't.
How many of them?
No, I don't have.
Okay, I thought I heard you thought there were 2 computers.
No, I don't know how many computers, but I do know that the computers were 2 requests. But what I'm saying is that the FBI is now looking into whether the NSA did something illegal. And if so, you're going to have not only a war between the intelligence community and the administration, but within the intelligence community, with the FBI going into the NSA.
So you're saying there's an interagency tug of war, or however you want to phrase it, because the FBI is potentially looking at the fact that the NSA, through FISA surveillance and others, may have overstepped its bounds or may have
did something illegal.
Done something illegal, and the FBI is looking into that. Could that be part of how this is all being brought to the surface, how President Trump may be aware of it?
Well, that's a very good question, because according to my sources, Comey, the director of the FBI, and Trump have, in fact, had conversations about this. And so where Trump is getting this, I believe, is directly from James Comey, that you've been tapped, this is probably not legal, and that's what set off Donald Trump.
Charles Krauthammer said the other night, he called it the revenge of losers, going all the way back to Hillary Clinton, and saying that there's anger that James Comey, as you're saying, didn't come out with more information on everything that was going on. Talk to us, though, about this revenge of losers and how that might be tied to what we're talking about today.
Well, I think the big thing, and we discussed this right before we went on air, is the Iran deal. The Iran deal was like the, capstone of foreign policy for the Obama administration, and now there's a real possibility that this Trump administration would undo that. And Ben Rhodes, who was key to setting up this deal, is now part of the resistance movement against Trump.
He was the first one on Twitter yesterday saying you're wrong about this wiretapping. He was right after him.
Shadow government that you've talked about.
This is the shadow government. And I think what's happening is that Rhodes is getting leaks from the intelligence community and talking to the New York Times, to the Washington Post, and other places.
But tell us more about James Comey. You've had a lot of insights into him in recent months, and you're saying that you believe there have been conversations either directly with James Comey and the president or people in between them.
No, directly.
Directly.
Yes.
That has given the president an idea that this was not obviously authorized by the FBI. It would have been the NSA going to the FISA court.
Right.
And there could be a problem with it. Tell us more. I mean, that's something.
But while Comey was doing the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails, he was being blocked by the other parts of the intelligence community. He went, for instance, to the NSA. He went to the DIA. He went to all these intelligence agencies, and they had been told by the White House, do not cooperate because we don't want to undo Hillary Clinton. We want Hillary to win the election. So he believes that there has been all along this kind of underground pro-Hillary, anti-Trump feeling throughout the entire intelligence community. and he's looking into it right now.
So how high up does this go in your, just based on everything that you know, if in fact there was this wiretapping that took place, and we saw the tweet yesterday from President Trump calling President Obama, former president, potentially a sick guy for doing this. Would President Obama have known about this at the time, had the wiretapping taken place?
Yeah, he must have known about it, but it's my guess, and I don't know how you feel about it, but that it's more likely that it was Valerie Jarrett and Ben Rhodes who were part of this, and Obama are the architects of this, and that Obama was informed. You know, Obama is not exactly the most engaged guy when it comes to these kind of details. I mean, he spends an awful lot of time watching ESPN and reading books.
Curious that their statement yesterday from the Obama camp, and Abby pointed this out before, did not deny it was going on, just said he did not order it. And that left the door open, as you say, for Ben Rhodes or someone else inside the White House at least knowing about it, even if they didn't order it.
I think it was ordered by Valerie Jarrett. That's my, and I don't know that for a fact, but knowing how the administration worked while Obama was in the White House, she was really pulling the levers, and Ben Rhodes was the guy who was between the press and these leaks.
Very interesting.
Klein,
Appreciate your
always
insights
connecting the dots for us, Elizabeth.
Thanks.
Good to have you here, Ed.
Thanks for being here.
All right, to some other headlines this morning. Starting with this, an illegal immigrant is on the run after assaulting a Border Patrol agent. Border officials says the Honduran man escaped from a hospital in Arizona where he was taken after entering the U.S. illegally and then assaulting an agent. The 37-year-old has a criminal history with drug offenses and has previously been deported from the U.S. And there's this morning, a reporter is attacked by a man in a ski mask, all on live TV.
While the bustle of the countless bars here open late at night on the Lower East Side. You already know, Majesty the Rebel. Put the camera on me. What's up? What's up? What's up? Don't put it up. What's up? What's up? Oh my God.
Yikes, that's WABC's Safan Kim in New York, able to fight off the attacker whose face was captured on that video. As you can see, police are still trying to track down that man. Fortunately, no one was hurt. And U.S. soccer is the first sport to require players and personnel to stand for our national anthem. The federal announcing the new rule requiring anyone involved with the team to stand respectfully during the anthem. And it comes, of course, after Megan Rapinoe kneeled during several matches last fall. The midfielder said the protest was a nod to Colin Kaepernick. Rapinoe was dropped from the U.S. women's latest national team roster. I like that beat.
I love it. NFL, take note.
All right, and there's this proof that practice makes perfect. Two New Jersey brothers now going viral with their serious pizza tossing skills. 12-year-old Michael Testa and 10-year-old Nicholas started working at their dad's pizzeria a couple of years ago. And to keep the boys busy, their dad put them to work. And soon the Testa boys were spinning pies like the pros. The brothers, they're going to join us next hour to show off their twirling salads. I want to see you guys try. Disaster.
See that, but they are
pretty wild.
I love it.
We got Adam Klotz outside, braving the elements yet again. It's gotten incredibly cold in the last 24 to 48 hours here.
Yeah, incredibly cold is absolutely right. We're looking at temperatures in a lot of places here. At least feels like temperatures getting down into single digits in New England, really throughout the entire Northeast. That continues right now with actual temperatures falling at least into the teens. So let's take a look at some of those numbers where they are really plummeting. 14 degrees currently here in New York with a little bit of wind that's coming through right now. It feels even colder than that. 11 in Boston. You run inland a little bit, and we've got some negative numbers across the board. So it certainly is chilly out there this morning. Here's what it looks like across the country on your satellite and radar. A little bit of rain running down along the Gulf Coast, but a big system we're going to be paying attention to throughout the rest of the weekend running into Monday. That is out in the Pacific Northwest where we're seeing snow, at times very heavy snow. We could be talking about totals getting up to 2 feet. I'm talking about a lot of cold weather, but take a look. These are daytime highs before the day's all over. 37 degrees here in New York City, and spots getting up into the 60s in the Midwest and in the Plain States. So it's warm in some spots. It is not warm out here this morning, guys.
No, thank you, Adam. Go back inside.
Will do.
All right. As you just heard, President Obama's former speechwriter is slamming President Trump's wiretap claims. But who is Ben Rhodes?
We'll answer that question. Plus, the Washington Post trying to sell a sob story about illegal immigrants, saying they'll get deported to a country where, quote, they'll barely recognize it. Our next guest calls the whole thing absurd. Stick around.
We're back with some quick headlines. A dangerous dirt bike stunt catches the attention of authorities. Video of a biker jumping over a California freeway now going viral. And while the trick may have been successful, the bikers could be in for some legal troubles. California Highway Patrol now investigating. And these 4 suspects asked for it, literally. Police showing up to their Missouri home, finding this welcome mat at the front door. It reads, "Come back with a warrant." Only problem? That's exactly what the police had. They searched the home, finding drugs, cash, and weapons, along with an ironic doormat. Pete?
Yeah, interesting. All right, President Trump taking a hard stance on the removal of criminal illegal immigrants.
As we speak tonight, we are removing gang members, drug dealers, and criminals that threaten our communities and prey on our very innocent citizens. Bad ones are going out as I speak, and as I promised throughout the campaign.
Well, the mainstream media is so shocked that he wants to enforce the law that the Washington Post is trying to gin up sympathy for those deported in an article titled, "After Decades in America, the Newly Deported Return to a Mexico They Barely Recognize."
Yeah, here with more on this sob story is Deputy Opinion Editor for the Washington Times, Kelly Riddell. Kelly, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Kelly.
So I took a look at this story, and you could almost read it in reverse, but it reads about folks who've been deported from the United States going to Mexico and not being prepared for what they see. What did they think would happen if they came to the U.S. illegally in the first place?
Oh, my goodness gracious. You know, I would just appreciate if the Washington Post could write with such compassion and sympathy about the blue-collar, everyday American worker like they did about these, you know, illegal criminal aliens that are getting deported back to their home country. There were so many absurdities in this article. It was hard to wrap my mind around, you know, what the narrative has been versus how they want to spin this and spin compassion for these illegal aliens. But let me just read you a graph in this article. It says more returnees back to Mexico means lower wages for everybody in blue-collar industries such as construction and automotive manufacturing, where competition to jobs is likely to increase, economists say. How ironic. You know, how ironic is this? Just in, you know, President Trump's joint address to Congress, you had the same paper, the Washington Post, basically fact-check him on all of his comments about immigration and how it's hurting the average American worker and say that's false. The economists say that's not true. But for Mexicans in Mexico, that is true.
Yeah, Kelly, this was also in the piece. It says that 1 flight a week, and that is 135 men were on the flight. That's less than 10,000 people a year. You compare that to the 12 million illegals we have in this country. You're saying, if anything, if you are supportive of what President Trump is doing, you're going to want him to do even more.
Yeah, I mean, this is a non-story. It also said in the story that President Barack Obama had 2 flights a week, and under President Trump, that's only increasing to 1 flight. I mean, if anything, President Barack Obama was a racist, xenophobe, you know, deporter-in-chief. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
We never heard anything about that at the time.
No, never.
Yeah,
Kelly, you've also
exactly
pointed out that the story notes that a lot of Mexicans are frustrated that those deported don't speak Spanish, but English instead. Yet we are, you know, you're pointed out for being xenophobic if you ask folks coming from Mexico to speak English. So a lot of double standards, shockingly, from the Washington Post.
Kelly, thanks for breaking this down for us. Good to have you here this morning. All right, coming up, have you seen this controversial billboard? It says, "Real men provide real women